Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more turkey patterning, and today we've got another very interesting combination with a new shell that I believe just recently came to the market. We've tested a couple of the other variations of it so far with some pretty decent results overall, but what can this version of them actually do? So as for the shells I've got today, I brought out some of these, the new Herter's Strutter shells, but these ones are their 20 gauge, 3-inch, 1¼ ounce payload of lead 5s, moving about 1185 feet per second. So we've got a 20 gauge lead load here today, and generally Herter's makes some pretty fantastic performing turkey shells. Now Herter's is made by Winchester, and specs and price wise these pretty much match exactly what the Super X shells are claiming and their price. So I believe there's a really high possibility that these Herter Strutter shells are just a reboxed Winchester Super X shell, considering they're like $10 or $11 a box and the same specs. So how will they perform? Because the Super X shells are generally some okay performers, but lead loads and 20 gauge have struggled, so we'll see what these can give us today. And as for the setup we're going to run them through, I brought out my Stevens 301 20 gauge. It has a 26-inch barrel on it, and for a choke we've got the Primos Tight Wad. It's a 570 constriction turkey choke, and just thinking about it here, this is another budget combination. Cheap shells, a $200 shotgun, and a like $20 to $25 choke here in this Tight Wad 570. But this setup and choke combo has given us some great performances before. So what can it do with these lead Herter Strutter shells today? So as for today's test, everything is set up the same as usual. The turkey paper's at 40 yards, and I've got the chronograph so we can get our velocity. So let's get you guys a view of that target and find out what these new Herter Strutter lead 5s can do in their 20 gauge version through the 301 and the Tight Wad 570. Could be decent, could be pretty disappointing, I don't know, but let's take our shot and see what it gives us. And here's where I would normally throw in an actual chronograph number for you guys. Unfortunately, I somehow lost the footage to that, but if I'm remembering correctly, it was roughly 1200 feet per second. It might have been like 1202 or something. So a little bit above that 1185 box claim, but still very much within the realm of reason. Alright, well, now we're down here at our 40-yard paper, and this is what we got. Now, right off the bat, yeah, we technically probably would have had a dead bird here. There are multiple of them right through the base of the neck there that would have gotten the job done, but you might have been starting to push your luck a little bit there. Now, looking at the pattern here, it kind of looks like we might have been a little bit low, but if we look at the overall pattern, we kind of have a hard cutoff line right down there at the bottom, and maybe a couple flyers up here at the top, so I think we were centered up, but we had a little bit of a hot spot form right down in the bottom right area of that turkey paper that kind of looks like a core-ish. And it's definitely not much of one, but it is a little bit hotter than some other areas in this pattern. Now, looking at the whole picture here, I can tell you that this is not an impressive turkey pattern whatsoever. And that has pretty much been the theme with all the 20 gauge lead shells we've tested. They've always been technically good enough, but nowhere even remotely close to what a 12 gauge lead shell would be. And sure, we do have less payload in a 20 gauge shell compared to a 12, but the patterns haven't even been really remotely even or condensed. And with this pattern, it's pretty much the same story as usual. We have a little bit of a hotter area down on the bottom right corner of that turkey paper, but the rest is a bunch of splotchy voids and flyers all up here around the top. It's just a bunch of stuff all over the place. Definitely not an even pattern whatsoever. Now, technically speaking, sure, that would be a capable enough 40-yard pattern, but I think 40 yards is the absolute limit for this. At 30 yards and in, sure, absolutely, you would definitely crush that turkey all day, every day. Even out to 40, it would still be a dead turkey, but if you misjudge your range a little bit, then there's definitely a possibility you could open up a void that would completely miss where you want to hit on that turkey. So who knows? Maybe these are just the same old same when it comes to lead 20 gauge shells in performance, or it could just be not enough constriction for them. That Tight Wad is a 570, so it's definitely not overly tight for a 20 gauge choke. Maybe if we go down to something between a 565 to 562, something like that, who knows, maybe even a 555 might help these out a little bit. I don't know, but I was definitely hoping for a little bit better for today's results, but I'm not entirely surprised either, considering what they are, being a cheap lead 20 gauge shell. That's not entirely too surprising. So as for today's results, definitely nothing too surprising. It's not a great turkey pattern. Technically, it would be serviceable enough to do the job, but not what I'm looking for. And maybe there's a possibility we can tighten the choke up a little bit and get more out of them. But for today's combination, definitely not super impressive. And here's the wad from that shell. Very typical Winchester type of stuff here. Even though this is a Herter shell, I believe it's the same wad they use in like the Double X and Super X and Longbeard shells and stuff like that. So definitely a pretty solid wad, but when it comes to 20 gauge and lead loads, they seem to be pretty limited. This one looks very much normal though. Nothing stuck down in there, no major damage. So nothing too special to see here as far as the wad goes. Alright y'all, well, what did you think about that result right there? I think it's pretty much what a lot of people probably expected it to be. This is a $10 or $11 box of lead 20 gauge shells, so I don't think a lot of us are too surprised with that result. That's been pretty much the normal with the vast majority of lead 20 gauge shells that we've tested. I just don't think they have the research and testing and production quality that something like a 12 gauge lead shell does. Now, can we get a little bit tighter than that out of the right choke combo? There's definitely the potential for it. I think with a little more constriction, we might be able to even it up a little bit, but I still think we're probably going to be pretty limited here overall. Now, yeah, sure, that would have absolutely done the job, but at 40 yards, I think you're pretty much pushing the limits here, at least with this combination. So I guess leave all your thoughts down below. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of these new Herter Strutter shells or the 20 gauge variant of them yet? And if so, what kind of results have you seen from them? And what other chokes and stuff do you want to see these shells run through? I've got a variety of them, so let me know what you guys want to see down below. So at the end of the day, a little bit disappointing here, but not entirely surprising either. I think that's pretty realistic for what the shells are, unfortunately. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.